What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and welcome back to another episode of Poker Hands. And today we're going to be taking a look at one of the most incredible hands I've seen in terms of overall comedic value and a very aggressive bluff raise on the river for a lot of money. Let's go ahead and jump into the action.
I want to play king with my cards.
You want your own way to play dirty, and I can't play a little dirty too? My kind of way?
Shuffling his on my cards. I look over and Jungle's shuffling chips on my fucking cards.
You know it's going to be a good game when Doug's already laughing like he was in hour 12
and now you can't even handle
on hour number 1 on Saturday.
I can't. You got me, bro. That's what breaks me is the chip shuffling on my cards. Anything else is okay.
Our hand begins at 200, 400 with a $400 ante and an $800 straddle. Jungle opens it up under the gun with ace queen. Definitely a standard play you're going to want to make. And the action folds around the Nik Airball in the straddle with 9-8 of clubs. 9-8 of clubs a hand you can certainly put a raise in here pre-flop. You've got nice post-flop playability with this hand, and it's going to kind of balance out your range for when you do have big hands like aces, kings, queens, ace, king. Well, with some suited connectors, you get some nice bluffing hands to give you a little bit of playability on some boards where you might normally be missing with those high pairs. Anyway, Airball does decide to just make the call, and let's take a flop. Also, before we get too far into this hand, in case you guys didn't realize from the table talk, Jungle had been shuffling his chips basically on Airball's cards. I was next to them. I saw it. He was actually doing some chip shuffling on the guy's cards. Some people probably not going to take that too well, and Airball let him know, don't do that to me. Sets up for later in the hand.
You're the person who squealed like a little girl just for a second and chip shuffling over.
Yeah, I am.
Over your card.
This is fucking brutal.
Both players with a pair, backdoor clubs for Nick. We have Joey Ingram here itching to get into the studio.
The flop comes ace 9-4 rainbow. Airball has middle pair and a backdoor flush draw, and Jungle flops top pair second kicker. I'll note at this point, I think the pot is actually a little smaller than 7,800 in the bottom right corner. I think there's 2K from each player and then 1,000 in pre, so it should be 5,000, although maybe it's possible there was a post that I missed, but I do think this pot size is a little bit smaller. Airball checks over to Jungle, who goes for just a very small bet here, about 1/4 pot, betting 1,200 bucks on the flop. On boards like ace 9-4 as the pre-flop raiser, you can use really small bets because either your opponent kind of paired here or they didn't. If they have some sort of high card hand, they're mainly going to have to just fold. And if they have a pair, they're going to call you kind of no matter what the bet size is. So you really target hands like king high or jack 10 of diamonds, things like that, which might feel very close between two decisions and have a tough spot. Also, lets you value bet thin when you have a hand like 10s or 8s where you can get value from hands that aren't just an ace. Anyway, back to the action. So Dan bets the flop here back over to Airball. Pretty clear just call on the flop. You could maybe argue with the backdoor flush draw once in a blue moon. You go for the check raise. But overall, this is a hand you just want to call. You have showdown value. You can be ahead of a bunch of hands Jungle bets. Airball does call, and let's take a turn.
To have a chat with Mr. Airball. That's going to happen at 1,500 likes as Dan hits trips here on the turn.
75, 250. All right.
I don't think I've ever seen someone shuffle chips on someone's cards before. He's still looking at it. He's doing it again. He's moving my cards.
He's looking at it while he's doing it.
When they started, they were like on top of each other. Now look at them.
Honestly, you should move them once you get them in the.
No, but now I'm kind of enjoying the theatrics of it.
But it's fine. It's just the first time.
I think it should be a
That reader definitely needs to be at best like 2 inches that way.
Needs to what?
The reader should be. Put it right 2 inches.
We have a new table.
The turn comes the ace of diamonds, giving Jungle trips with the second best kicker, and now Airball is dead unless Jungle finds a way to fold at some point in this hand. And if you want to see more hands like this, head on over to Poker at the Lodge stream, hit the subscribe button. We have streams 4 times a week, tons of clips you're not going to want to miss. So make sure to subscribe over at that channel. I'll see you there. Back to the hand, we're looking at a backdoor flush draw now in play. Airball checks once again. Jungle now decides to bet 5,000 into a pot that should be about 8,000, I believe, 8 or 9,000. This is a reasonably good size from Jungle here. He can definitely still bet hands like 10s through kings to try and get value from a 9 or some kind of turn diamond hand. But you also allow yourself room when you have 3 of a kind or you have a full house for maybe your opponent makes a move. You don't want to bet too big in a lot of the board pair spots because If your opponent has an ace, they're going to continue versus big bets, and if they don't, they're going to fold, which usually makes those sizes not particularly good. You can maybe argue when you're bluffing or you have a hand like pocket fours, you could really hammer here on the turn, but all in all, I like betting just this 2/3 pot size from Jungle. Over to Airball, pretty tough spot now with the 9, although apparently he doesn't think so because he calls in about 0.1 seconds. But the reason I think this is tough is Jungle can definitely value bet a lot of hands here. If he has 10s through kings, he can value bet, and any ace that open preflop can also value bet. So a lot of hands here that can bet. I would actually start to consider possibly folding some holdings when I do have a 9. Also, having the 8 of clubs not a great card because club hands might bet the flop and look to bluff the turn. So maybe a spot you could look to fold some of the time, but you do need to occasionally defend with a 9 in this situation. So don't mind the call, which he makes, and let's take a river.
This table is small.
Yeah.
Check mark here. I saw it not bad today.
For Jungleman. Yeah, this table is pretty small.
It's almost done.
But you know, we could make a rule where you're allowed to shuffle your chips on somebody else's cards. That could be like an official rule of the lodge.
That seems like a phenomenal rule. What could go wrong?
Airball goes for the $400 extremely small block bet.
Yeah, there you go.
And starts shuffling
Make it
on his
mandatory.
chips.
Like, if it's heads up, you must shuffle your chips on somebody else's cards.
Funny.
I don't know if you guys are listening, but Taras in the background is like a bad idea factory.
Of course. Let's smoke in the lodge. What's the worst that can happen? What are you going to do? Carry us out? The guy's 4,000 pounds?
Yeah, let's just shuffle the chips on other people's cards.
Big raise here. Plaques in play.
From 400 to what was that? 50,000?
55-4.
He's blocking some boats there with his 9er.
And starts shuffling on the man's chips there, and that is
Wow, what a disrespect.
Yeah, there we go. This is excellent. This is excellent. Just shuffle. This is excellent.
Nick's, you know, Dan never ever folding here. Willie's probably thinking about raising or just calling the 55.
What am I watching?
A lot of stuff to go into here. Let's start off with this $400 lead from Airball. We're fully into the live poker realm when we're looking at a $400 lead into a pot that's something around $17,000, $18,000. Basically, Airball is just trying to get him to react in a way that might not be optimal. And so this bet, if you're in Jungle's shoes, you should just treat it like a check, okay? When the pot is big and someone bets incredibly small, just bluff raise with the same hands you would have bet as a bluff on the river if they checked. Just call or fold with the hands that are basically just your worst hands you weren't going to bluff. And then raise all of your value bets and just call your hands that are too thin to bet anyway. Just treat it the exact same as a check. But what Airball is trying to do is get Jungle to raise and set himself up for a huge move. Over to Jungle with the ace and a queen kicker, you just got to raise. I mean, you're obviously going to be good a lot of the time here. You can beat almost probably every ace that Airball can have pre-flop because of 3-bet ace king. Yes, once in a while, Airball can have a flush or a boat, but those are going to be very rare. And it's a board that's kind of hard to have a flush. The reason is that the ace of diamonds and 9 of diamonds are on the board. So in order for Airball to have a flush, he either has to have a 4x of diamonds hand, so he could call the flop with a pair, or he has to have floated something kind of marginal on the flop. Maybe it would be reasonable to have a king queen or king jack of diamonds, but not many diamonds hands really make too much sense here other than having the 4 of diamonds and having a flush draw on the turn. So Jungle makes it 13.5, 14,000 here. Definitely a reasonable sized raise. I like how Jungle played this hand. This is where the hand goes completely off the goddamn rails, and Airball decides he's just going to make it a lot more money to go and bets $55,000 using 2 plaques. Looking at Airball's raise here with the 9-8 of clubs, I'm not a huge fan of this one. I would much rather have a hand like 9-7 where I block a couple different boats that my opponent could have. I also might want to have a high diamond, so a hand like King 9 or King 9 or Queen 9 when you have the high card being a diamond. Those make way more sense here. It's possible that Airball just thinks based off of some timing reads or based off of some kind of live tell or the chatter in the hand that he might just think the Jungle simply doesn't have a hand that can call. And that's where things get a little bit interesting, right? Because you can look at the math and the numbers, but if in high stakes games or if even in low stakes games, your opponent is very sharp picking up on what someone might have, well, then a lot of this kind of analysis might go out the window. But from a theory standpoint, this is definitely not the hand you want to use. It just doesn't have the right properties. Very difficult decision now for Jungle facing this raise. I do think that Jungle is going to have to think about all of his hands here and proceed accordingly. So I'd start with, what do I think that Airball would raise for value here? And I think that the answer to that is something around a king or queen high flush. I don't think that if Airball had a 5 high flush, he'd be raising. The reason is that he still has to beat the hands that Jungle calls with. So I think that Airball has a queen high flush maybe, king high flush maybe, but more likely he's representing that he has a full house. When someone's representing a full house, having the trips blocker is actually better than having the diamond blocker because you're blocking more of their value range. That said, Jungle can have flushes, boats, and an ace with a diamond in it. This is a very big raise. Jungle only has to call about 1 in 3 times or 1 in 2.5 times or so to prevent Airball from bluffing him. So I do think in this situation, it makes more sense for Jungle to call when he has hands like king, queen of diamonds or ace, queen with the queen of diamonds. And if we want to get into maybe should Jungle bluff re-raise, which is a very reasonable play to make in this spot, by the way, because Jungle can have boats, I think it makes more sense to use the ace of spades and the ace of hearts because it blocks more ace X suited boats that both players could have. So in this situation, I think what Jungle should do, we should every now and then probably bluff re-raise the river again. And then he should mainly just be folding. I know that seems weak, right? And I would rather call this hand than like Jack 10 of diamonds, but Jungle can just have so many other hands. Sure, he's going to fold his air, but he can have aces with a diamond. He can have pocket 4s, pocket 9s, ace 9 suited, ace 4 suited, ace 7 suited. Those are all reasonable hands for him to have. King, queen of diamonds, king, jack of diamonds, ace, queen with the queen of diamonds, ace, king with the king of diamonds. The list goes on and on. So I think all in all, in this situation, I would probably lean towards having some of those other hands. Maybe once in a blue moon I call here, but unfortunately it does make sense to let it go.
Lays it down.
Lays it
Wow,
down.
he's getting shown the bluff 100%.
And I don't know if Airball is going to let him off easy in the post-hand chatter.
100%.
You're my bitch. Don't forget.
Oh!
Wow.
You're my bitch was just
Fucking
uttered.
easy poker, Jungle.
Man, that was an incredible.
You're my bitch. Don't raise my $400 bets.
Whoa.
That was an incredible hand.
Man.
Wow.
Jungle's a fish.
Wow.
KBM giggling.
Jungle is a fish. Bring more jungles. Straddle, Jungle. Don't be scared.
Ladies and gentlemen,
No
Come
way.
on, straddle.
Nik Airball has arrived
Play bigger.
at the lodge.
Faster, bigger. More money.
That was a wild hand, man.
It was.
I kind of want to give Jungle a hug. That was mean, Nik Airball.
That was too good. That was too good.
Fucking amazing.
Oh, what was that?
What do you expect from Dirty Dan?
That's awesome.
Thank you for joining me today for Poker Hands. We're back. We're pumping content. If you want to watch more videos and you like what you see here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Got a lot more videos coming at you. Thank you for joining the team, and I'll see you guys again soon.